I've got the answer right here, ladies and gentlemen, to everything that ails you. Now step right up.
One who acts like a duck about his salves and remedies. The cruel practice of making money on people's worries, feared throughout the years as quackery.
I said cured of backache, nervousness,
All right, guys and girls, and whatever you may be, creatures from another planet that are listening in, they love quackery, who are enjoying the best season of Earth 2020, best season yet, for sure. They just don't know what shit's going to happen next. Neither do we. This week's, welcome back, this is Dr. Will the Pill with John Boy. He's having a second kombucha of the night, so you know it's wild. You know this shit's getting litty-titty.
Wait, I think I'm getting a little buzz. Wait, no, I'm not.
It's got alcohol in it.
Like 0.2%.
Perfect. That's probably more percent than our doctor for tonight was effective. We're talking about John R. Brinkley. And I struggle with what I was going to put the caption as, either nuts or a bad boy. And you'll see why I put those. So who was Dr. Brinkley? Do you know, have you heard of this guy?
No, but I heard was there Christy Brinkley? Is that like a...
I don't think they're related. She's still hot, man. What is she, like 65 and still smoking hot?
Yeah.
Crazy.
She is hot.
So, John Romulus Brinkley. That's right, Romulus. Just like Romulus and Remus, you know about the two boys that were raised by wolves, supposedly raised by wolves.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that's what's funny. So John Romulus Brinkley, later on in his life, he has a statue in his yard that's like Romulus and Remus drinking from the teat of a wolf. It's really weird looking. But that's the R. And John Romulus Brinkley. He was born in 1885, and he made it all the way to 1942. And he is best known for performing xenotransplantation of goat testicles into men's scrotums to treat impotence and all other sort of disorders.
Is this?
That's why I said nuts or a bad boy.
Is this a real thing?
Real. Oh, boy.
Can I get some?
Dude, you're going to love this guy so much. Okay, you're going to be obsessed with this guy. I am. He's amazing. So he was also a radio broadcast pioneer. He ran for governor of Kansas twice, almost winning one time. He supposedly started medical school at Bennett Medical School, and then due to lack of tuition, he had to finish at Kansas City Eclectic Medical University. Obviously, Kansas City, that's in Kansas City, Kansas, not in Kansas City, Missouri? Missouri. Crooked letter, that's Mississippi. All right, so I just want to go ahead and right off the bat give a ton of credit to, I did a bunch of research on this, and then I found out there is a documentary, and I watched it, and it is so good.
Oh,
you got to check it out. You got to go and watch this immediately after you listen to our episode, obviously. It's called Nuts, and it's by, the director is Penny Lane. It won all these awards, Sundance Festival, all this different stuff. It's praised by Vice and all these people as being an awesome documentary. So it's free on Amazon. If you have Amazon Prime, you can watch it for free. So check that out. But first, listen to the rest of this episode, you asshole. Your first question, obviously, was what the hell's up with the goats, right? A lot of this stuff is hard to follow because people had to look at he had a biography that he sanctioned, plus like trying to actually learn about what really happened. But as far as we can tell, he was discharged from the Army during World War I because he had a nervous breakdown only 2 months into service. So he took his wife and he moved to Milford, Kansas in 1917. Now, Milford, Kansas was a really small-ass town. They said it only had about 300 people when he moved in. So that's small.
Yeah.
And he opened like a little health clinic drugstore in town right on the main drag. Dirt roads, of course. So he said one day this customer came in, this man, and he said, "Man, I really wish there was a cure for sexually weak men." And John Brinkley's like, yeah, be good. He looks outside and there's a couple of goats having sex, and he's like, man, if only I could have some billy goat nuts in me. Or goat, they called them billy goat glands. That's what they called testicles, is glands. And so it like in the documentary, it's good because it shows like they reenact this as like a cartoon, and it shows Dr. Brinkley like a light bulb over his head, basically. And allegedly, after the patient talked Brinkley into it, he accepted $150 to do the surgery and gave him a goat testicle in his ball sack.
Wait, in addition to his 2 already, or did he just replace those?
Well, we'll get into what actually happened in there. No, because that was obviously my first question, too. So it would be like these men who were unable to have children, these men who weren't able to, get it up or any whatever, sexually weak men, they'd come in, get the goat gland transplantation, and that would restore male virility and fertility. So then he started charging $750 an operation right there in in the back room of his little clinic there in Milford, which that's almost $10,000 a pop, today's money.
Jesus.
Which, that's no...
Was he using anesthesia or anything?
Yeah, I mean, he was doing it legit, pretty legit, like he was gowned up, as legit as you could do in the 1920 or whatever. So he actually, it was a really lucky thing that happened to him. One of his clients, right off the bat, hadn't been able to have a kid for like their whole life, and boom, right after he had the surgery and healed up, he got his wife pregnant.
With a goat?
A baby.
Or a baby?
Baby. No, but it was a human. Okay. And they named him Billy. So there's a picture of Dr. Brinkley holding Billy, the first goat gland baby, they called him.
Jesus.
Isn't that shit weird? Alive. And so, dude, he could be. Let's see. I don't know if he was born though, like around 1920 though. He's probably dead.
Yeah.
Well, 100 years ago. Yeah. But basically, yeah. So Brinkley, he realized, man, he could start. He could fly with this, man. With that, he started saying, okay, this not only cures that or fixes male problems like that. He came up with 27 other things. It was everything. I mean, you don't even have to list them, because basically you name it, it'd be. This was a cure for it, goat gland, and he actually even started putting it in women.
Whoa. That's how I like my women, with some big old goat balls.
With a goat ball in their ovaries. So weird. It didn't take on as much, take off as much with the women. I guess they're not as desperate. You know what I'm saying? But he would say even it was like emphysema, flatulence, whatever, everything it fixed. Like this goat gland, But anyway, he started this mailing out letters and advertisement, and he would put, it will turn hapless men into the ram that am with every lamb.
What?
Catchy,
the ram that am with every lamb. I'm getting
sounds
that
like a
tattooed
Dr.
on me.
Seuss. You're gonna have a lot of tattoos. Yeah. What was the other one? A night in the arms of Venus leads to a life on Mercury from last week. And
I got a lot of tattoos.
The ram that am with every lamb.
I got a lot of tattoo appointments to make.
Plus, you got to get the satanic tonic dude in his underwear somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah, dude, with boxing. That would be a good one. I like that one.
Yeah, it would.
I'm just getting basically Clark Stanley right on my left breast.
Yeah.
The man himself.
Mm-hmm.
So it started to really take off, and he actually said that the root of almost every problem started in the glands, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? And 90% of insanity cases and 75% of divorce cases were due to diseased glands.
75%.
90% of insanity cases.
What?
This guy.
Oh my God.
That was bold.
I love this guy.
Dude, you just wait. He only gets better. So it got really, really famous in that time period.
Yeah.
And there's even like, if you watch the documentary too, they'll show like an old, silent movie where like one of the comedians, he's like riding his horse and he goes by a thing that says like goat gland surgery or whatever, his big sign, and the horse like goes in, and the guy like looks around to see if anybody's looking, and then he sneaks in too to get like his goat gland surgery. But they said like politicians, judges, actors, and they maybe even Woodrow Wilson, who was the president, you know, right around that time, were possible patients.
Jeez, man.
It was like really popular.
Is he the only guy doing it? Or was there or other people doing the surgery too after it got famous?
Yeah, he did have people who tried to do the same thing too, but not as many.
Yeah.
Because he started catching some heat, obviously, pretty quickly, as I'll let you know. But he didn't give a damn. Like, this dude, he was very cocky.
Yeah. I like that cocky. No.
Hey! He was ballsy, I guess you should say. Ballsy and cocky.
Dude, this is crazy. Please tell me this is not quackery and that I can go get this done.
You must not have. This must be your first time on the show. You sure, man? You can go get this done. This is definitely a spoiler, but his wife, like, apparently, even after his death, when she was alive, like, they would go interview her, and she would be like, "Yeah, you know, people are still, even though you know they said it doesn't work, people in secret are still going to get this done. Like, it really works. Like, they just don't want to admit it. Like, people in secret are still getting goat gland transplantation." She was thinking that, like, she still believed even after he died.
I believe
in this
it,
dude. Believing in it, man. Getting the so by 1923, he had made enough cash to build a radio station right there in Milford, and Milford really grew a lot when he was there because he brought in a lot of money, a lot of notoriety. People would trains were coming through, bringing people, and
crazy.
It built up kind of around. The town kind of built up around his business, and they loved him there.
Yeah, that's insane,
he even sponsored a little league team he called the Brinkley Goats. So he got this radio tower, but knowing him, and how ballsy he is, he's not going to get a small radio tower. He built, it was called KFKB, Kansas First, Kansas Best, or Kansas Folks Know Best. It just depends when you ask him. He would tell you what it stood for. But it was a 1 kilowatt transmitter, which was one of the stronger in the country at the time. So really strong radio transmitter, it would kind of, because Kansas is pretty centrally located. Yeah. So this thing's going to go a long way. So people are going to hear what he has to say. So he would get and talk for hours every day, mostly about people needing his goat gland treatments. And he had a big ego. So what they said, he would basically shame men into needing to come and like work on their ego. Like, don't you want to be more of a man? That kind of thing. Like, yeah. But he had like a way of saying it where it was like, it was all like borderline, especially for the time, kind of like borderline inappropriate things and like, guy talk sort of like, but he was a doctor and like, you needed to be more sexually active for your health, and you need this to be more sexually active. And in order to do well in life, you need, he would just, he could work you up to it. And he also started selling a bunch of other medicines, of course, because if you got a radio station and you're a doctor on the radio, what else are you going to do?
Yeah, Garcinia, baby.
Boom, get the Garcinia.
24/7.
So to bring more people to his program, he started doing all sorts of entertainment, military bands. He would teach French on the air. He would tell people their astrological, forecasts and horoscopes and those sort of things. They would tell stories, and they would even tell erotica stories. They had Hawaiian singers, American root singers, like old timey string bands, gospel singers, country music, and stuff like that. So like getting those kind of people on the radio at that point was not really big yet. So he kind of helped that kind of stuff take off. But
that's crazy, man.
Obviously, all that did was to bring more attention to his goats, right? By 1930, the Kansas Medical Board held a formal hearing to decide whether or not to investigate him, look into his medical license, from the things that he said on the radio, the things that he was doing, the things that he was selling. The reason why it took so long, because obviously 1917 he was there, 1923 he built this radio, and he started making a ton of money doing these surgeries, famous people all over. Well, the reason he got all this heat was eventually they started this whole like nationwide campaign to look into legitimacy of medical licenses. And remember, I said he finished at Kansas City Eclectic Medical University. They were like, well, that doesn't really fly with our Kansas board of medicine. So they actually revoked his license in Kansas in 1930, and they said he had performed organized charlatanism.
What?
And 6 months after that, the Federal Radio Commission refused to renew his station's broadcasting license. They found that basically all his radio stuff was mostly just his own advertising, and he also had this thing that was called the medical question box, which is almost like you ever listen to like classic Loveline?
Yeah, with with
Dr. Drew and it's basically like that, but like with Dr. Drew. You remember when Adam Carolla and Dr. Drew would do Loveline?
I never saw that.
You got to check that out. It's you can find them still. It's amazing. So people would call in and ask them all these like sexually related questions, and then they would talk to them on the air. And obviously, you got a comedian and a doctor. It was awesome. It's almost like we try to emulate that here, except for we're not smart or not as smart or as funny as Dr. Drew or Adam Carolla, but we try our best.
Yeah. Did they even try to find out if maybe people were getting benefits from this? Because I feel this could work.
He presented a pretty so when they investigated him. I'm glad you asked that because he obviously had to stand in front of a lot of, the medical board several times. So when they investigated him, and you see in the documentary, you'll see like the some of the transcripts of what he said. And he said things like, okay, the first guy who thought to wash his hands in surgery was thought that he was crazy. He didn't know why it worked. He just knew that it worked. Yeah. And so, and they're like, well, Dr. Brinkley, you haven't, had anyone sit, you don't let anyone come sit in on these, surgeries to like what happens. You don't explain why it would work, what's going on in there. So that was another thing. He didn't really help himself out with facts. He just was a really good talker. Yeah. So if you go watch that documentary and it'll explain a lot about, how cocky he was, how he had a sweet haircut back then too, man. Back when he was younger, it was sort of like the haircut now, where it's short on the sides and comb over on the top. Yeah. Nice pair of glasses, a little Billy Goat mustache. But no, I mean ultimately he had a foe who will come back around here. I'll go ahead and introduce him now. His name is Morris Fishbein. And he was heavily involved with the American Medical Association and would go on to be the editor of the Journal of American Medicine, or the Medical Association, JAMA, which is still obviously very big today. And he was instrumental in sort of getting heat on Brinkley and eventually getting him in trouble. But don't worry, John. This story is just getting fired up. He tried to go to California, and he would travel around in a van and perform these surgeries on like a probational period in California, but he never was able to get an official license, and so he couldn't stay. So he went back to Kansas, even though his radio was shut down, even though his medical practice was shut down. And what do you do next? You turn to politics, right?
I guess.
So he ran as like a third-party candidate, write-in candidate, because he didn't submit his stuff in time to be on the ballot. Yeah. But he rode around. Basically, he was the first person, and everyone emulated after this. He was like the person who would ride around in the car with the speakers, vote for Dr. Brinkley. Yeah. But the problem was, a write-in candidate, they have very strict rules, and this is almost a form of voter control, like you'll see now. They had to spell it exactly right. It had to read J.R. Brinkley. And a lot of people, not only a lot of people don't write well, they probably don't know how to spell. A lot of people would just write J.R. Brinkley without the periods. That was thrown out. What? If they put J. Brinkley, it was thrown out. If they put Dr. Brinkley, it was thrown out. Some people would write the Goat Doctor.
Goat Doctor.
John Brinkley.
Why? I mean, I thought
Jim
it was
Brinkley,
a bocce check. I've never
No,
voted.
see, he
so-
was no. So that's the problem. So you had the two main party candidates for governor. He was late.
Okay.
So he actually would have won the election, but upon recount and throwing out the incorrect ballots, he ended up losing.
Oh, man.
So he ran twice, and that first time he ran, he almost won, and the next time he didn't. But so he moved. He decided, okay, I'm out of here. Where am I going to go next? Texas, baby.
Texas.
Texas.
The goats are bigger in Texas.
Everything's bigger in Texas, baby, especially the goat testicles. But the reason he went was actually because he moved to Del Rio, which is like kind of, if you know about the shape of Texas, you know it's almost like a big triangle with the top handle or whatever. Well, this is on like the bottom left angle, and there's like a sort of a curve in where Mexico kind of curves up a little bit. So it's right by that little curve. And there was a point in going there. He went with the Mexican government, and they set up a huge radio station just across the border because he didn't have a radio license in America. But if he had a strong enough tower just across the border, then he'd be good to go, baby. So he moved to Texas because he didn't want to live in Mexico.
That's so smart, man.
It's so smart, dude. Yes.
That is beautiful.
Yes. So it was called, and actually this became a big trend too, so people didn't have to follow a lot of the America's radio rules. They called them border blasters.
Border blasters.
Yeah, so the Mexican government helped them pay for this because they were pissed off that the rest of North America basically figured out like how they wanted to split up radio frequencies and stuff, and they didn't even, like, Mexico was left out. So they built a 50,000 watt radio. So, before we had a kilowatt, which would be 1,000 watts, right? So this is 50 times stronger.
Jeez.
So he called it XER, and there were two 300-foot tall towers, which is, I mean, that's pretty high even, anytime. But back then, man, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So he called it its Sunshine Station Between the Nations. And later on in 1932, they said he was allowed to make it 1 million watts strong.
Jeez.
Which was by far and away the strongest radio in the world. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, dude.
This shit is awesome.
So
they said on a clear night, you could hear Dr. Brinkley Station in Canada.
What?
Yeah, they said it was so strong that people who lived in Del Rio would pick up the radio in their fillings, in their teeth. And you could hear it vibrating on the metal, on the barbed wire fences. They said it was so strong it could turn on and off car headlights. So these are all the rumors. I don't know enough about radio. It's powerful waves. I don't know.
Wow.
That's crazy shit, right? They said it would bleed into the telephone conversations. That makes sense, right? If you're talking to someone and you just starts coming through, you're picking it up on the line.
That is so great.
I know, man. 1 million watts.
Yeah. Jesus, man.
He ran a wire from his house in Del Rio to the radio station.
Yeah.
So he didn't have to go to Mexico to do his broadcasts. So he started doing all the same shit he did before, obviously, but he also would offer advertisements for other quack people to sell stuff. So, and all sorts of shit. It was amazing. Now it was it basically just blew the whole top off of it because he had no restrictions because he was going from Mexico.
Yeah.
The people who would come on, he would sell these things for $1,700 an hour which is $26,000 now.
Wow.
And they would get these long periods of time. But I mean, if you have a station that could reach Canada, and radio was what everybody was listening to then, you're right?
That's crazy, man.
Yeah, and he would start, a little thing before I tell you about all the different products that they would now sell on XER, when he would do his goat transplant surgeries now, because obviously he opened up one in Del Rio, and he kept doing his surgeries in Texas because he didn't get his Texas medical license revoked. And he kept open the one in Milford. He just hired more doctors to run it for him. So he kept doing it there.
Yeah.
But what he would do in Milford and in Connecticut, and he set up one not Connecticut, excuse me, Milford and in Texas, and then he set up one in Arkansas too. He started giving away these little radios to everyone who was a patient, so then they could listen to them.
That's awesome.
Genius. Told you would love this guy. So he started selling, the people on his show and him, who he rented out the time to, would sell injections and pills for sexual prowess. He would sell crazy water crystals, which are basically like crystal healing now.
Yeah.
They would sell life insurance policies, religious paraphernalia, including, and this is true, they offered autographed pictures of Jesus Christ.
What?
Those, man, I wish I could get my hands on one of those.
Yeah, man.
I wonder if the bottom it had like Dr. Brinkley's like stamp of approval or something.
This is awesome.
Man, I mean, he took life by the goat balls, I'm telling you. But not only that, so actually, since he was so damn powerful of a signal,
Yeah.
he would get all these singers who wanted to come. They actually called it Hillbilly Hollywood down there. So like the country music singers would come down to play on the station. And actually, they said that Johnny Cash actually heard June Carter and the Carter family singing on XER. That's how he heard her the first time, that he ended up marrying her.
Yeah.
Isn't that cool?
No, yeah.
The Carter
that was
family.
in the, I don't know if it was XER, but that was in the movie. Did you see Walk the Line?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you remember he heard
Maybe
June
that was
Carter
it then.
on the family radio?
That's where it was supposed to be. It's supposed to be on from this radio
That
station.
is freaking crazy, man.
That is, right? Oh, my God. So, obviously, he became a baller because everything's bigger in Texas. Estimated between 1933 and 1938, when he got to Texas, he made over $12 million in that era's money, which is,
Is that today?
No. That was in 1930s money. Which would be what? More than 50 million, I guess now.
Jeez, man.
Not bad. So he bought a big mansion. It was just on 16 acres down there in Texas. I'm sure he could have gotten more if he wanted it, but he had a dozen Cadillacs. He had a greenhouse that had over 8,000 exotic bushes, animals, and other stuff imported from the Galapagos Islands.
What?
He had a massive swimming pool that had like a huge diving tower on it, which I'm sure wouldn't have been common back then.
Yeah.
Private planes, yachts, diamonds. Dude had all the shit, dude. He was basically like, you could have gone to his house like MTV Cribs.
Jeez, man.
Actually, people did go visit his house too, because he set up the fountains in the front, and he had like his Romulus and Remus statue with like, feeding on the wolf teats.
Yeah.
And he set up the fountains around the front, and it was almost like Disney World. Like they would shoot up with different lights and different music, and it would like shoot in the air, and people would come and watch it in his yard.
What?
It's like a historical landmark now. This house is still there.
Oh, my Lord, dude.
Man, this man is amazing.
Yeah.
Rumor has it that he was at some party in New York, or I think it was New York, and he ran into his old nemesis Morris Fishbein, right?
Yeah.
And he saw him from across the room, and he didn't say anything to him. He just winked at him, like, you can try to stop me. You can stop me now, but I won't stop now. You can hate me now,
Yeah.
or whatever, whatever that song is. Basically, he's like, you can't touch me. So he pissed off old Fishy, as he called him, which is not smart because he was the editor of JAMA. This dude also was like, if you look into his history, he was big time into like cracking down on quacks. Any alternative medicine he hated, he wouldn't even consider it. Like if it was untested, if it was novel, if it was any like alternative stuff, dude, Dr. Fishbein was not about it. But so he started writing these articles about Brinkley again. While he was in Kansas, he did them. Now, 1938, he had a 2-part article series called Modern Medical Charlatans, which was all about Brinkley.
Jeez.
So, what did Brinkley do? What did Brinkley do when you get a hater? He sued him
Yes.
for libel, right?
Yeah. Nice.
Well, he sued him for $250,000, which they said was like $4.5 million in today's money, for libel and damages. So Brinkley, of course, was rich as shit, hired 5 expert lawyers, and Fishbein, and he just had one lawyer, and they were in a little courthouse in Texas. Problem was that Brinkley really didn't help himself again. He couldn't explain how any of his shit worked. All he had was a bunch of success stories, a bunch of men who wanted to come in and say, oh, I had kids after I have seen Dr. Brinkley. Oh, you know, I was able to please my wife, and all these different stories, right? The other interesting thing is Brinkley started peddling this stuff called Formula 1020 in Texas too. And he said, well, I'm not even doing these surgeries anymore. So if you want to look into those, that's old news.
Yeah.
Formula 1020, we came up with this in a lab. It does everything that the goat gland surgeries do, and you don't even need to do surgery. It works great. Well, first they're like, okay, we'll get into Formula 1020, but he brings out like 10 expert doctors, and each one of them refutes like the goat gland surgery. They said, oh, I was finally able to observe one of these surgeries. I got in there, and all they do is they cut a sliver of a goat testicle, and they just slide it in behind a human testicle, and then sew it up. So it's just floating in there.
What?
So he leaves the balls in, and he just slips a goat testicle in there, and doesn't even attach it. So it just basically resorbs into the person's nutsack or becomes scar tissue.
Oh, crazy.
This whole time, man, you thought he'd had an actual goat nut. It's just a little sliver.
Oh, man. So there's like no benefit? There's no testosterone or anything?
Nothing.
Man.
Didn't do anything. They all looked at him and they said, there's no way. So they went through all the different claims, that it could possibly treat. They said, no, there's no way it could do any of it. Brinkley's like, well, that's fine. That's why we stopped doing it. I know it worked. But we use Formula 1020 now. They're like, well, we had that analyzed too. And it's 1,000 parts water and 1 part blue dye. So that one didn't fly either.
Oh my God.
So they also came out and they brought out the book, which is the biography of Dr. John Romulus Brinkley called The Life of a Man. Sweet title.
Yeah.
I love that, dude. I hope when I die, it'll be The Life of a Man. Will the Pill.
I'm getting that tattooed on me, too.
The Life of a Man. So he reads from it, and it's all this ridiculous stuff. And the documentary Nuts follows, like, what he says, like, in the biography. Because there's some hilarious stuff in the biography. Like, he basically, he gets the guy who writes the biography to make his life sound amazing in all these different ways. And so he asked him, like, well, is this biography accurate? He's like, yes, it's as accurate as, as my recollection allows, like, as from what I can remember. And they're like, well, what about, when you graduated from the Kansas City Eclectic Medical College, when was that? And he's like, oh, it was a beautiful spring day and whatever year. He says, oh, really? He's like, so you were in Kansas City at that time? He's like, oh, of course, it was beautiful, graduation. I'll never forget it. He's like, that's funny because there's an arrest warrant for you in Greenville, South Carolina for selling blue dye to inject into people's to restore manly vigor.
I still love this guy.
Dude, he's awesome. And he's like, and at the time, you were apparently married to a woman named Sally. It's like, that was his first wife. Apparently, his second wife didn't even know about. And he had two girls before they got divorced. And he married the second wife who didn't even know about his first family.
Oh, my God.
Because he had one kid with his second wife. But, he acted like that was the only family he ever had. Pretty great, right?
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Arrested in Greenville, South Carolina, man, our neck of the way.
Right up there, yeah.
It didn't take too long for the jury to come back, and they said he should be considered a charlatan and a quack in the ordinary, well-understood meaning of those words. Fishbein was vindicated there, and he said this should be a decision. The decision is a great victory for honest scientific medicine, for the standards of education and conduct established by the American Medical Association. Basically saying, like, this should be a lesson for everyone to learn, like, what a quack is.
Yeah, but he's
like
still
the
rich,
definition.
though, so,
Aha! Well, so he had to pay for the court case, right?
Yeah.
But the problem here is that this verdict was obviously very well publicized, and it opened up a barrage of lawsuits against Brinkley and all his places. Estimated that over $3 million in lawsuits were brought against him after this. But that was also just the beginning, because then the IRS got involved.
Oh, my Lord.
He was guilty of tax fraud. So by 1941, he had to declare bankruptcy.
Oh, man. He has some diamond stash somewhere.
I'm sure, man. But unfortunately, the United States and Mexico reached an agreement at that year as well about radio bandwidth, and they shut down XERA, the radio station, too. So, not long after that, in 1942, he got investigated by the United States Postal USPS for mail fraud.
Oh, my Lord, dude.
But he was never tried for it because in May 26, 1942, he died absolutely broke, and he died of heart failure. And he was buried in Forest Hill Cemetery in Memphis, Tennessee. I think that's where his family was from. So there is actually, I'll put this picture up on quackerypodcast.com. It's a picture of his grave, which is a pretty ballin' grave. It's got like an angel on top of a big pedestal, but someone cut the wings off the angel.
What? Why?
In this picture, they didn't, because he was clearly not an angel.
He's an angel in my eyes.
He's pretty awesome, isn't he?
Yeah.
Dude, how great is
Dude,
that,
I'm
Dr.
gonna go
Brinkley?
watch that movie, man.
You're going to love it. Everybody should go watch it now that you've listened to this. Nuts. About Dr. Brinkley. It's really well done,
That's
obviously.
Crazy.
It's on. You can get it on Amazon Prime. Absolutely included, since everyone in the world has a Prime account attached directly to Jeff Bezos' brain.
Dude,
maybe. Hey, you know what though? Maybe this is the secret. I mean, that's what I was saying. Is that after his death, they were saying that they were interviewing his wife, and she was still a believer that like people were getting this surgery in secret. Like people still get the goat gland surgery. It still works. Like they're just trying to discredit my John.
Jesus. I just want to go get that surgery, man. I'm going to look it up. You can do it, right?
I guarantee you, if you go down to Mexico, somebody will give it to you. Oh, yeah, I meant to bring up, they actually would so he started raising his own goats, obviously, because you got to keep your goats. So they would let, the patient pick the goat that they wanted the balls from.
Yes.
Pretty good, right?
That's great.
Like, you go out there and pick you one you like. We'll bring that old Billy in here and see what you can do. So obviously the question that it presented, when the experts came in and they were like, well, if it doesn't work, then how do these people get their, wives pregnant? Like, they never had an issue with it. It was all psychosomatic, or it was the placebo effect, which would still be like psychosomatic.
Yeah.
So it's like, since he never really did anything, any harms, like some people probably got harm from the surgery, but he didn't affect any of the other stuff in there. He just put a little slip of flesh in there and sewed it up. If they believed, all you gotta do is believe, man.
Yeah, man. Power of the mind.
All you gotta do is believe. It's strong, man. All right. Well, you got any other questions about old John Romulus?
No, that was a great
Maybe
one.
not. Oh, one other thing I found in my research, too, here, just a fun little tidbit before we wrap up. So he knew the writing, after Kansas, he knew the writing was on the wall as far as his medical degree, right? He wanted to become legitimate. So he actually, he knew a lot of famous people because he did some goat gland transplantations. He went over to Italy, and he was going to get, an honorary medical degree in Italy and then come back and just be like, hey, man, this thing is good to go now.
Yeah.
But Benito Mussolini refused. He refuted the degree.
God, even
so
Mussolini?
Mussolini. So that's got to be crazy, right?
Yeah.
That dude. If that dude's like, no sir, then
Yeah.
no sir.
That is nuts.
No sir. yeah, nuts. But they said he still tried to claim that degree for the rest of his life. He's like, man, screw Mussolini. I got that degree. So it was just some small medical school in Italy that just was like, yeah, we'll give it to the man. This man's doing great things with goat nuts. I love how, man, Mussolini had enough power to just be like, nope.
Yeah.
Not that today. It's a me, Mussolini. All right, well, if there's no other questions, that's going to be our show for Will the Pill and for John Boy. All right, if this episode really quacked you up and you want to support the crew, please head on over to quackerypodcast.com/join and become an official quackhead. Make sure and hit that subscribe button. Follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Check out all the pictures on the show on quackerypodcast.com. Rate and review on Apple Podcasts. That makes a huge difference. Tell your friends. As always, keep calm and quack on. And remember, you're not really a man unless you listen to quackery. I'd love to have like a 1 million watt radio.
Let's build one.
Just be like, yeah, well, I mean, we could put it right on top of your roof.
Yeah, I'll do it.
300 feet, that's all you need?
Yeah.
It's not that high. The neighbors wouldn't even notice.